This one hurts, and I know if you're watching this right now, you're probably feeling the same mix of frustration, disappointment, and exhaustion that every 49ers fan felt when that game ended. Kyle Shanahan clearly felt it too, and the way he spoke after the loss tells you a lot about how he processed what just happened. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't hide from it. He flat out admitted the team didn't have it, crediting Seattle while owning the fact that the 49ers were outplayed in every phase. And that honesty matters, especially after a season that demanded so much emotionally from the players and the fans. What really stood out was what Shanahan chose not to do. He didn't go into the locker room and unload about blown plays, missed assignments, or the final score. Instead, he made a conscious decision to zoom out. He thanked the team for the entire season, for battling through injuries, adversity, and constant challenges. He knew everyone in that room was already sick about how it ended, and he didn't want the final memory to be just about one ugly night. That tells you this loss wasn't just about a bad game. It was about a long season finally catching up to them. And if you're being honest with yourself, that probably mirrors how you feel too. Yes, the ending was brutal. Yes, it's going to sting for a while. But it doesn't erase the fight this team showed all year. Shanahan emphasized how proud he was of the locker room, and that wasn't coach speak. That was a guy who watched his roster grind week after week without excuses. This team didn't fold when things got hard, and that's why this loss hurts as much as it does. Expectations were real. Before we go any further, if you appreciate coverage that doesn't overreact or throw people under the bus just to chase clicks, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and your support genuinely helps this channel grow. And let me ask you this, because I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you respect how Shanahan handled the locker room after this loss? Yes or no? As painful as it is, this chapter of the story sets the stage for understanding how the game actually got away from them. Because while the final score was ugly, the unraveling didn't happen all at once. It happened play by play, moment by moment, and in the next part, we need to talk about exactly how that spiral started and why the 49ers never fully recovered from it. CC, the game didn't just slip away from the 49ers. It snowballed. And Kyle Shanahan walked through exactly how that happened, starting with the worst possible opening you could imagine. Giving up a kickoff return touchdown on the very first play is the kind of thing that instantly flips momentum, gets the stadium going, and puts you behind the 8 ball before your offense even touches the field. Shanahan admitted it sucks, but what was interesting is that he didn't frame it as the game being over right there. In his mind, whether it's a kickoff return or an opening drive touchdown, the problem is the same. You still have to respond. And that's where things started to go sideways. The 49ers had chances to answer early and simply didn't capitalize. 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Situations this team has lived in all season. Situations they've converted countless times. Instead, they came away empty. Shanahan explained that the looks Seattle gave them took away the sneak, forced them into alternative calls, and those didn't hit. And when you fail in those moments, nothing else you did on the drive matters. You don't get credit for moving the ball if you don't finish. Then came the turnover. Another possession, another chance, a fumble. Suddenly, you're not just down early. You're handing the other team short fields and free points. Shanahan pointed out that by the time it was 17-0, the hole was already deep, even though the game wasn't technically out of reach yet. The defense battled. The offense finally got on the board. At 17-6, there was still hope, especially with the chance to go into halftime keeping things manageable. But the final drive of the first half changed everything. A 3rd down conversion extended by a penalty, followed by a late score, completely shifted the math of the game. Instead of regrouping at halftime down 2 scores, the 49ers walked into the locker room knowing they had to answer immediately. And when they didn't convert on 4th down on the opening, Drive of the second half, Shanahan admitted that's when it truly got out of hand. This is where context matters. When you count the kickoff return, the fumble, and the 2 failed fourth downs, Shanahan essentially labeled them all as turnovers. That's 5 momentum killers in a playoff game against a team that doesn't give up explosive plays. You're not built to survive that, no matter how talented you are. And once you're chasing points, you're forced out of your identity. Let me ask you this, because I'm genuinely curious how you saw it. What hurt more in this game, the special teams touchdown or the repeated 4th and 1 failures? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're finding this breakdown helpful, make sure you like the video. It helps more than you think. All of this leads directly into the next conversation, because once the game state changed, the offense had to change with it. And that's where Seattle's defense, Brock Purdy's night, and the lack of big plays became impossible to ignore. CC. Once the game tilted and the 49ers found themselves chasing points, everything about the offensive approach had to change, and Kyle Shanahan was very clear about why that played right into Seattle's hands. He didn't shy away from saying it. Seattle has an elite defense, one that's been at the top of the league for a reason, especially when it comes to not allowing explosive plays, and when you're forced into obvious passing situations against a defense like that. The margin for error disappears fast. Shanahan actually liked how the offense came out in the first half. They were moving the ball. They were more prepared than in the previous matchup. But football doesn't reward partial success. Getting stopped on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 erased all of that. Then the fumble wiped out another promising drive. And by the time the 49ers failed to convert again early in the 3rd quarter, the math of the game completely flipped. At that point, they had to abandon the run, not because they wanted to, but because the scoreboard forced them to. That's where Brock Purdy's night gets tricky to evaluate. Shanahan didn't point fingers. He said no one played great, no one coached great. But he also acknowledged that Brock made plays, especially early, even while dealing with constant pressure. The stat sheet might not tell the full story, but if you watched closely, you saw a quarterback trying to extend plays while the defense closed in and throwing into tight windows against coverage that doesn't bust often. That's a tough ask for any quarterback, especially when big plays just aren't there. And that's the key point. Seattle doesn't give you cheap explosives. When you're down multiple scores and can't generate chunk plays, you're stuck stringing together long, perfect drives. One mistake, one penalty, one pressure, and the drive dies. That's exactly what happened. The offense didn't suddenly forget how to play. They were boxed into a corner by game flow and by a defense built to punish teams in that exact situation. So before the hot takes start flying, it's worth asking a fair question. Do you think Brock Purdy did enough given the circumstances? Or do you believe the offense as a whole needed more from the quarterback? I want to hear where you land on that in the comments. And if you're enjoying this kind of balanced breakdown, hit subscribe and help us get closer to that 1,000 subscriber goal. We've got a lot more off-season coverage coming your way. All of this sets up the emotional heart of this season, because even in a loss like this, there were players who embodied exactly what this team is about. And when Shanahan talked about them, you could hear the pride in his voice. CC. If there was one part of Kyle Shanahan's press conference where the emotion really came through, it was when he talked about the players who defined this season, especially the ones who never stopped fighting, no matter how battered the roster became. Christian McCaffrey was at the center of that conversation, and the way Shanahan described his season wasn't casual praise. He called it one of the most impressive individual seasons he's ever seen, and that's not something he says lightly. Think about what McCaffrey was asked to do. A historic number of touches, no early bye, week after week of carrying the offense, taking hits, and still finding ways to produce when everyone in the stadium knew the ball might be coming his way. Shanahan made it clear that this wasn't just about talent. It was about obsession, preparation, and commitment. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, emptying the tank every single game. That kind of dedication resonates in a locker room, and it resonates with fans too because you know you're watching someone who gives everything they have. Then there's Fred Warner. He didn't even play, and yet he was still part of the story. Shanahan talked about how badly Fred wanted to be out there, how hard it was to keep him at bay, and how he still found ways to lead from the sidelines, coming down to get the defense together, staying engaged, being present even when he couldn't physically contribute. That's culture. That's identity. And it matters, especially in moments when a season is slipping away. This is where it's important to separate frustration from perspective. Yes, this loss is historic in how lopsided it was. Yes, it's going to be remembered. But Shanahan made it clear that you don't let one night erase everything else. You evaluate it. You learn from it. But you don't turn it into something bigger than what it is. It was a loss, a painful one, not a verdict on the character of the team. So let me ask you this, because this one's personal for a lot of fans. Who was your MVP of the season for the 49ers? Was it Christian McCaffrey, Fred Warner, or someone else entirely? Drop the name in the comments. And if you believe effort and toughness still matter, in today's NFL, make sure you subscribe and help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. This team may be hurting right now, but there's still a future to talk about. And that brings us to the final piece of this conversation, because as painful as the ending was, the focus is already shifting toward what comes next and how this team moves forward from here. As hard as this loss is to sit with, Kyle Shanahan made it clear that it won't be the thing that defines this team moving forward. The conversation is already turning toward what comes next, even if it's not something he wanted to think about in the immediate aftermath. He acknowledged the reality that there's a strong chance the 49ers could lose both coordinators, and he didn't downplay their importance. He praised them as elite coaches, guys he believes are head coaches either now or very soon. That kind of stability and leadership matters, and replacing it is never easy. At the same time, there's a sense of cautious confidence underneath the disappointment. Shanahan pointed out that a lot of young players were forced into meaningful roles this season. They got real reps, real pressure, real experience. And while that doesn't make this loss hurt any less, it does matter when you're projecting forward. Those snaps don't disappear. They become part of the foundation for what this team can be next year. What stood out most was his balance. He didn't brush off the loss, but he also refused to let it linger as something larger than it should be. From a football standpoint, it will be evaluated all offseason. The 3rd and 1s, the 4th and 1s, the turnovers, all of it will be studied. But emotionally, the message was clear. You put this game to bed, you deal with the roster, and then you get to work building the best possible version of this team for another run. And that's where you come in as a fan. Do you believe this season, despite the ending, set the 49ers up to come back stronger next year? Yes or no? I want you to answer that honestly in the comments. And if you've been with me through this breakdown, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We are pushing hard toward 1,000 subscribers, and this channel is going to be with you every step of the offseason, breaking down moves, decisions, and everything that shapes what's next.